Okay. Hello.
Howdy.
Welcome everyone. Designing for Drupal. Just to do introductions. I'm Katie Raymond. I do graphic design for the College of Business here at Iowa State. And Callie Himes, she does graphic design, writing, everything for the College of Ag and Life Sciences. Rachel, who is a graphic design intern with Ann Griesel at the College of Vet Med. And Ann is the main graphic designer over at Vet Med. Okay, so things that we're going to go over today, knowing that designing for a CMS is different than designing just regular HTML pages. For beginner people, I know that was a new concept for me, but advanced people, I'm sure they're just like, well, yeah. When writing content, you have to keep in mind that you're not writing a novel, and transferring something from print to web is different. You can't just go straight from the other. And then keeping your brand consistent, making sure that your brand is good on your website, and then usability, and usability, accessibility, intuitiveness, all that kind of fun stuff. So, designing CMS is not HTML. Your content should be organized and have a clear plan. Whenever I start a website, whether it's for my actual job or for a freelance person, I usually do the hierarchy grids or smart graphs, I think, in Word. So you have your home page and then your main navigation, and then I organize it that way so everyone knows where everything's going, and it's easier to move it in Word than it is on an actual website. So having that all organized helps. And then if you're doing something from scratch, that would be a good starting point. But if you're doing a facelift on your website, when we redid the College of Business, this was a time for us to think, do we really need this page here? Maybe we should move it somewhere else or just delete it all together. So it's a kind of a nice time to clean out, reorganize, and rethink about how your website's set up. Unlike HTML sites, the main look of your site can change. The nice thing about Drupal is that you can have a block display on this page and not on this page. In HTML, that's a little bit harder to do. Takes a little bit more finagling. Okay, designing for a reactive environment. Like I said, the layout will change. It also changed based on the platform you use. So right now I'm on an iPad, but I also have my iPhone, and then we have a laptop. So those resolutions are going to make your site look different. So you need to be conscious of, like, what's it going to look like on mobile, what's it going to look like on an iPad or tablet, and what's it going to be on a laptop that might have, some people still use the 800 by 600 resolution, and then I'm on a 27-inch screen, so what's that going to look like on my iMac monitor, So thinking about the fluid layouts and the grid designs and things like that, so everything resizes and increases proportionally. And this was a huge thing for me when I was starting out with Drupal. In Dreamweaver, you have files of HTML pages, and you have files of your images and documents and things like that. While you still have that in Drupal, you can't go link to an HTML file, you link to the node. So kind of a basic overview of that, which I'm assuming most of you guys are familiar with. But if you're not, and you're just starting out in Drupal, that was a huge concept for me to grasp, because I was used to designing in Dreamweaver and having static HTML pages, and then when I come work in Drupal, they're like, we don't have that. Like, we have a database of files, and we have nodes and books, and it was really confusing for me. And then Callie's going to talk about how to organize your content to make sure that it's not super long and making it user-friendly.
All right. Well, I don't know if any of you know what TLDR means. TLDR is too long, did not read, and that is not what you want people who come to your website to do. So my biggest thing is I talk a lot, and my expertise, I write for the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. Mostly I do recruiting pieces, but I also blog on the side, and I find myself, before posting a blog post, I edit it probably 6 times because I talk a lot and nobody wants to read a 900-page article or 900-word article. So when you think you're done, give it to somebody else, take a look at it, and make sure that it's something that somebody might actually be interested in reading. And like what Katie said, so maybe you have a publication that you print. So maybe, in our case, it's an alumni magazine. And when you transfer that to web, you have to realize that this 1,200-page or 1,200-word feature article is not going to be translated onto the web that way. So how can you make that so it's readable to people? You'll want to chunk up your text into maybe smaller pieces than the paragraphs that you already had written. Because people will look at the page, and if they see something that's a paragraph that's that long, they're automatically going to skip it. So even if it makes sense to be in one paragraph, if you chunk it out in bullet point things, people will be more likely to read it. If you use subheaders and other tags like strong for bold, H1, H2, and H3, search engines will find things better. A search engine knows that H1 is the most important information, H2 is the second most, and H3 is the third most important information. Also, when talking about the alumni magazine, for instance, so say you've got a really big feature article and it's about young alumni. Well, maybe instead of putting your feature article as is, you can use the power of Drupal to make it a recurring feature. So maybe in October you put part of the article, and then the next month you put the next part, and maybe it becomes a recurring monthly feature. And that could be something in addition to the publication you already do. And another thing you don't want to do is don't date your content unless it specifically ties to an event. Because if somebody's looking at your website, they don't know if it's new or old information unless you have a date on it. And it just makes your site look outdated. If somebody hasn't updated for 6 months and there's a date on there, people are going to know that. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel.
All right, put your brand in the driver's seat. So, is there anyone in here who's a designer? Obviously, we're designers, but is anyone else? That's I thought I recognized you. I actually talked to a girl yesterday who said she's a developer here, but she had to be both the graphic designer and the developer and the coder for everything too, and she didn't have a background in design, and it was very challenging. But for those of you who are just developers as well, and you don't do the design work, somebody gives that to you, there's things you still need to be thinking about as well. Because the more stops that you can have on the way before your website's finished, the better, and the more eyes that are attuned to seeing these certain things, the better too. Anyways, basic branding. So we're going to talk about visual hierarchy, visual identity, and the voice. So visual hierarchy, there's basic concepts behind your brand already. Use your brand when you're designing or when you're coding. There's going to be things that sometimes you guys are going to have to catch. There's going to be issues with developing, with coding that isn't going to work out very well with the design that you already have. So you need to think about certain issues. You need to think about let's say you have a very clean company. So it's about efficiency, it has certain concepts about streamline ideas, I don't know. Anyways, you're not going to have anything that's crazy visual. You're not going to have anything super busy. You don't pack everything into one page. And use those things to your advantage. If you were in the last session, we talked about visual identity guidelines a little bit with Iowa State. All of us here work for Iowa State. We have a really strong visual identity plan here. So we have a lot to adhere to, but use those things to your advantage, like I was saying. Your companies are going to have, or your clients are going to have a visual identity guideline usually as well. And if they don't, there's still going to be concepts behind what their company does that I just mentioned. There's still going to be a driving idea and design for those ideas. With us, we have very strict colors, very strict typefaces, very strict sizes, and that is a stepping stone for us. We use that as a big help when when we design things. Voice of the website kind of pairs up with what I was talking in the first section. Voice of the website, if it's really professional, if you have a very professional, efficient company, you're not going to write something that's, or you're not going to put something in there that's like crazy big, super personal. You're going to develop and code and design for something that matches your company.
Okay. Be the man with the plan, or woman with the plan. Essentially, what we want to be able to do is, we talked about this in the project management session, and there is another one later today, but it's important to define all the aspects of your site plan up front and make sure that you have deadlines along the way and milestones that all those involved with the project are aware of. And I think that this stems from anyone that could put, has a big investment in the project, even administration level, to managers, to designers, to developers. You're going to also have to learn to work on a priority basis. I think there is a difference between a web design project per se and a different type, like an MBA project. Okay, I'm working on that right now. There's a huge difference. Oftentimes, the website plans need to be restructured and reorganized, reprioritized, and done with the internal client or an external client. I think you should treat them both similarly, okay? So that they can actually determine what things get dropped from the project or what things move to a different, maybe later in the timeline. You should have a very close relationship with those involved in the project. We've talked about this before in the last session, but it is important to have designers and programmers interact with one another throughout a project. You're going to actually lose time if you are in your separate silos and don't communicate, and then you get together and find out that the puzzle pieces don't match. That's going to actually lose some time on your end. You also want to be able to flag problems early. If you're communicating often, you're going to find different problems sooner, and that's always going to be to your advantage. And yeah, I think as designers we run into this a lot about our, in the beginning initially we might get attached to a design, and we're recommending that you don't. Be flexible and pliable and just be able to adjust your design. Think about the company, think about the corporation, the big picture items here. This is not you personally as a programmer that somebody is saying something about. I mean, this is just, it's code, it's language, it's development, it's a picture, it's an image, it's promoting an idea, okay? And you're going to want to test. So it's also a good idea to get a focus group that's outside of maybe your normal team, okay? Pull in some faculty, staff, in our case, because we're in colleges, pull in some people that you know of that don't know much about the site, and that they can come in and actually give them something to do. Could you tell me where you'd click if you're looking for X? And if they sit there and struggle, there's an issue, okay? And there's also, that's just a good way also to test bugs beforehand, so that, like I just said, if something goes wrong, you can fix it. And I think that the WYSIWYG option is kind of referring to more of even before a site is developed, there's programs out there that you can use to help with navigation. I found that in my personal experience as a designer, it's important to almost take the design out of it first and do some framing and try and show programmers what a view is going to look like. If I click here, what's going to happen? Okay? What type of content is going to display? What type of features are going to be housed here, and what do those features look like? And then pull them into the framework. This also is something that you can use. These programs are something that you could give to a potential focus group even that is clickable. It actually will be clickable, and it's just going to look like a sketch on the screen, you know, but it helps in the beginning to have everyone know what's going to be happening and what the process is for the project. All right, so we do have some resources that we're going to go through and talk about a little bit more in depth. I can tell right now we're going to be ahead of schedule, but we want to use this time to just, if you have questions, and maybe interact with each other a little bit too. And at 1 o'clock, we're going to have a designer meet programmer, or I guess design people and web people BOF. So if you're wanting to talk more, or you get started in a conversation in this room here today and want to expand it, we'll have a BOF at 1. So does anyone have any questions right now that they'd like to ask? Ben?
You were talking about mobile sites earlier.
Mhm.
How does Drupal handle that? Is it just like resize images for different resolutions, or
Yeah,
how that works?
that's considered like a reactive, I think what we're referring to in a reactive site.
Responsive.
It's responsive, that's right. Responsive is what we need to use the term. And there's others here that will be able to expand upon that. If you know or you've developed a responsive site, would you like to talk?
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff is when I was talking about the grid system. When you design, if you're designing a theme from scratch, having a grid system and using fluid layouts, that's going to help a lot too when you design for different resolutions.
And so you can think about, for example, like the header, like the tabs, if you have tabs at the top. What happens when it gets smaller? Do they start stacking? What's going to occur? You're going to have a priority of information go, like you'll have maybe this block is going to go underneath the tabs, and then this content's going to go underneath that, and this.
So does that just kind of happen? Like you said, like does it stack? Or does
There's a lot to it, I think, as far as programming goes to make that happen. I know if you look at the DrupalCorn site for this conference, it is responsive, and there's a lot to that I can't speak on because I don't program. But if there's somebody that does or knows anything about that, and that would be a good question too for the BOF. I'm sure there'll be some people there that can talk about it. It's a fairly new concept. I think that the other concept that I've taken away, even from DrupalCon Denver, is people are starting to do mobile first. How many people have heard of mobile first? Okay, good. About half of you. What that means is they're starting to talk with, when a corporation or a company wants to redesign a website, instead of just starting with the website with the massive number of pages, they're saying, let's do the mobile site first. And what it does is it prioritizes the information from the big site and gets it developed so that it starts to really hone the company in on exactly what they want to promote. So when you go to do the big one, you're ahead of the game as far as that goes.
So anyone in here just starting out with Drupal? Okay. Did it all make sense when I was going through? Sorry, I talk really fast, but I get excited. I was thinking about it. I was like, I know I just went through that really quickly, and I don't know how many people are just starting off with it. So, does it make sense with the CMS versus HTML? Because I'm used, like when I first started, I was designing in Dreamweaver, and people were designing in front page. So to explain a CMS to new people is kind of, I don't know. I have a hard time putting it into words. Does anybody have any questions on where to start when you're doing that?
Yeah, where do you start when you're doing that?
What do you mean by that?
Okay. Well, I mean, like, how to get going? Because my
How do you get going?
my first project was the college business website. Okay, they had this website out there. It was really old. They needed to redo it and get it done and put it updated. So they gave me this thing called Drupal, and I sign into it and figure out stuff. And there's nothing. There's no files. You know, like I can't go to /contact page and see that whole page all in one, you know? Like when I go to the theme file, it's PHP mixed with HTML and maybe a little Java or something else on there that I don't understand. So I can't physically see it in my Dreamweaver program. So when I started, I built my theme idea in Dreamweaver because that's what I was comfortable with. So I put my divs where I wanted them, even with the blocks. You know, I designed a home page and I designed a content page, knowing that those things could change, knowing that I could have this left-hand block and I could have this right one and I could have a full page. And so I had to kind of think that this wasn't going to be a static page. It was all going to be able to be moved. So in my Dreamweaver, after I designed it in Illustrator first, because it's easier to move pieces in Illustrator than Dreamweaver. So I had that set up. Got that approved, got it all figured out what we were going to do, took that design, moved it into Dreamweaver. So I did all the HTML, CSS, that kind of thing. And then I gave it to our developer, and I said, okay, how do I put this into a theme? Like, where do I go from here? So got on the Drupal site, found a really basic theme. Framework, I think, is the one that I started out with, and figured out where their divs were and kind of put mine in there. Didn't really touch the PHP, I just dealt with the HTML and CSS. So putting those pieces together and kind of making it fit on top of someone else's already done work for what I needed.
So this was in Drupal?
This was in Drupal, yeah.
So you took an existing team
And then I modified it a little bit.
and were you looking at the CSS for the Drupal theme page? Were you looking at the CSS in that?
Yep.
For
Yep.
that theme?
Yep.
And modifying that CSS.
Mhm. Yeah.
So you were able to see the guts of that Drupal template theme?
Yep. Yep. I have. So the theme that I downloaded, it came in a nice little folder with all the package documents, things like that. So it had the main one, which I found out was page.tpl.php, which I've never dealt with a PHP file before, but I was told that that's the one that you need to edit, so that's the one I worked with. So I opened up that one, and then I opened up the CSS that came with the theme. There were a few things in there that I didn't like, so I took it out. A few things I've added, changed, a few things I left, kind of made it my own. This was like a 6-month long process, so don't think I did this overnight. But yeah, I basically took someone else's blank slate and put all my images and colors and formats and all that stuff in both the main theme page and then the main CSS file of it all. All of the other documents and things like that, files that are in there, I had my developer help me out with, because he told me to work on this one and then we'll go to the next one. So does that help answer your question?
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah.
Okay.
Still be able to black box.
Yeah, it's really confusing because when you're used to coming from static HTML pages, and then you get this content management system that has no HTML pages. It's like.
So do you use HTML actually?
I do. I do.
So there's still HTML code
In the
file.
in the PHP file that I use, I still have, you know, spaces for divs and things like that. Like I have a main header area. If you look at College of Business website, there's, you know, something fancy on this side, and then there's menu items over here that change constantly that I didn't want to make into a block. 'Cause I'm not super proficient with Drupal, but when I have to use it, it makes me cry. So I put it in the theme, some links in there. The IT person I work with, I make his head spin when I ask him about Drupal because I don't understand a whole lot about it, but I know how to theme. So there is HTML that I use. It's within the PHP. There's CSS that I use. You can do inline styles if you really want to. It's all pretty much the same. It's just you have to work around the PHP stuff. So that's where the developer comes in to play, that they can explain, like, you can't delete that line. It has to be in there for this to work. Or we'll add a line here, and that's going to create a new block or something like that. So still a learning process, but I've gotten my hands dirty on a few things. So.
Are you able to understand the PHP enough you can work with it, or you just try to ignore it entirely?
A few things I can get. Like when it says block, I understand that's a block. As I work with Drupal and WordPress, and so I've kind of gotten accustomed to the basic PHP things. I'm not too comfortable writing any kind of PHP stuff to make it work the way I want to. I'm more of like, what does Google have to say about it? So Google's been my best friend in this whole learning process, since I just ask it a question and it tells me what to do. So, some, not a lot.
I'm in the mode where I'm basically the developer, and the designer is more or less the departmental administrative person. She still wants to do things literally in front page, I'm not kidding.
Oh, no.
It's not even a supported product anymore, like, I
Yeah.
suppose that'll still run, but no.
Yeah. Yeah,
You're better off getting a screenshot from her.
Yeah.
That's exactly what she does. She makes something and I like, literally use it as a screenshot and use it as a picture more than anything.
Yeah.
So when you're designing the responsive site, do you go ahead and do mock-ups for all of the different screen sizes before you start doing the view? And if you do, is there a certain screen size that you're starting with?
Yeah, I guess Anne can talk about the mobile side of stuff, because I know that she's done it for VetMed, but when I started my design, I stuck with the 1024 by 768 resolution, just because that was, it used to be 800 by 600, and now it's 724 by 768, and I think now it's even higher because of all the new monitors, but I started designing in that size, and that was going to be my web. Business hasn't moved to a mobile version, but I do all of my beginning work in Illustrator. That's where I start all of my stuff, because it's easier to use pieces of my So, and then I push it in Illustrator first.
I'm going to see if I can.
Into your layouts, other than just maybe like pulling out some images, I just know things that you really had to take into consideration.
I guess for different sizes and resolutions and things like that, the menus, the navigation.
Versus that and all that.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself doing a lot of different like the view changes.
Yeah, I think, yes. I did the site, I helped with the design for the Drupal site, for the conference. And what you're referring to is like, when you drag this changes, right? So, yeah, so what I did is, I actually mocked this up. I know it's not perfect here sometimes, but it's pretty close. There are definitely different sizes, and the programmers actually gave me those and said, okay, we can do from here to here to here to here. The more that you give, I think the more fluid it's going to be, because what's happening is as you change the screen size, it's actually jumping to a different, so it'll know when to jump. Like once you pass that halfway mark, it's going to jump here. So you have less jumping, the more, it really depends on the way your site's designed too. I mean, we have a couple columns here, so, but yes, short answer to your question. I mocked it up, and I just used like Illustrator or whatever I had, did it in and said, let's make this happen at this stage and this happen at this stage. So they had a little bit of a map.
But it's jump points.
But
not-
it's,
You don't
right,
necessarily work with specific sizes. 'cause
right. It's
every
jump,
time you
yeah,
get a
it's
size,
jump
someone
points.
comes out with a new one and
Yeah.
I mean, like,
doesn't work.
Yeah.
do you find it easier to start with what content you're going to do on the cell phone, and then maybe add a little more as you
Yeah.
go up to a full?
Yep, and there's actually websites out there, and I wish I could remember it, and they're probably going to be like, man, you should know this. There's a site that I went to that actually, that they provided me that actually gave some size jump points to follow. So yeah, it was a little bit more. And then just to talk a little bit on the mobile site, what we've done is Gia and Seth, who's back here, actually helped a lot with this. But we created a mobile site based on, we got a grant for 3 months for the summer to be able to hire a part-time graphic designer and a programmer. And we actually pulled content from the Drupal site onto the mobile site. So after the site was built in 3 months, then it's not something that we have to continuously update separately or manage separately. So that's how we have dealt with it, because we didn't actually go mobile first, like, I mean, now, but 5 years ago, or even, 3 years ago, we didn't have that in our heads at the time. So the mobile site came after, and so that's how we've dealt with it at this point.
Can I go back to her question
Yes.
over here? The lady who asked about how to start out in Drupal, I had a different approach because I actually learned from John Van Dyke, who's not in this room right now. But I was his intern when I was in college, and he just threw me in and basically boot camped me on Drupal, PHP, CSS, HTML, and it was kind of a learn at your own pace thing, which doesn't really fit the actuality. But what I learned from that experience is that if you're just starting out, the best thing to do is figure out what does your site need to do, and then go on to Drupal and find themes that fit pretty close to what you want to do, and maybe possibly fit kind of a look you're going for as far as your grid goes. That's probably going to be the easiest way to do it. And then once you get those themes, I would maybe look at 2 of them at the same time, download them, install them, and there's this program called CSS Edit, which is CSS Edit. And you can actually go in, open up your website with that theme, and you can click on different things within CSS Edit, and it will show you right where that piece is. So say you want to change the header. You click on the header, it'll highlight the header, and it will say, this is where the code is for that, and this is what you'll need to do to edit it. So say you want to make your header taller, you click on it, it'll tell you where you can edit it to make it taller, and change the color, and do all of that stuff. And so that's basically what I do now, because I mainly work in print now. So when I want to go and redesign my blog, it's like relearning the whole process all over again. So I just open up CSS Edit and see where everything is, and you can save the file, upload it, and all of a sudden your website looks like what you had. So when you make changes in CSS Edit, it will show you, it'll give you a preview. So what I learned from him is the quickest way to see if you've got the correct thing is to make the CSS, like make it something very obvious. So make it red. So that way you see that that's what's changing. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, that sounds like a really useful.
The Safari developer option does kind of the same thing too. I know Firefox. Firebug. Yeah, I use that a lot because I had a test site set up, but so I wasn't messing with the actual live site. And then I'd go into like enable the developer option in my Safari, or have Firebug on Firefox, and then I could see where all of my divs were and how all my CSS fit in, and if my image was too big and all that stuff. So that I still do on our live site even, because I still come across issues that I need to change in the CSS, or I need to change in the widths, divs, and all that kind of stuff. So it's been a huge help for everything.
Just to follow up on that, so you're tackling the kind of the look and feel of the site first by experimenting with the themes and modifying the theme. Now, once you throw the modules into that mix, you find that the modules kind of blow up your design process.
That's what Katie was really talking about with, I know that this is my design, but it's going to change. So you might have your front page looks fantastic, and when you start adding modules to things, all of a sudden your content goes like this, or just different weird things happen. So you just know that even though it may be perfect, when you start adding modules, you're probably going to have to modify.
So designing around the presence of modules, is that, can you then say go back to, like, say using CSS Edit and modify based on
Yep. So when you add a module, what you'll do is you'll pull up your web page in CSS Edit, and then that module is going to show up. So you can click on it and do the exact same thing that you did. So the more you start adding to it, I usually try to go piece by piece, because otherwise it's just way too much at once. But you can just do the same thing continuously as you update. So if all of a sudden there's a problem, you can change, you can fix it.
Working on a test site is probably the best thing, because, I mean, that's, modules are the part that kind of make you cry when I'm working in Drupal, because some of them are really in-depth and confusing. But, I mean, once you get them, you know, so there's a lot of stuff that you can do in HTML and CSS, but it's easier if you can just download a module and have them do it, you know? So, like, I could code something and write it as a, you know, even do an iframe, which I know y'all are cringing at that, but I don't know, if there's a module out there, I'll search, like, calendar, how do I do that, instead of me having to go in manually and type in an update and stuff like that. So there's a few things out there that are really helpful, and a few things that I'm not gonna lie to you, you're gonna give you problems.
And we had some really good training sessions on Thursday. If maybe some of you participated in one of those, but Chris Shattuck, who's here, did a training session using buildamodule.com. That, for me, I've been in and out of Drupal for the last 5 years at different capacities, and I felt that, you know, if you're really starting from square one, his videos on building a Drupal 7 site were phenomenal, and makes you feel like you can actually really do it. I mean, so as just a, you know, a subscription that I've done other tutorials before, I've looked at other other information before, and sitting at my own desk at home for 5 or 6 hours, I learned from buildamodule.com in about 15 minutes, okay, because I was trying to figure it out. so I don't know, there are trainings out there too that are very helpful for explaining the different components.
And just to follow up on the,
Yeah.
Chris's build module, is that get paid, is that
Yeah.
subscription?
Yep, it's a subscription, but it does things that other tutorials do that I haven't seen, which is it'll show you the actual video, and then it'll actually have the type, like the words that he's saying on the right, and they're highlighted as he's speaking. It's done in very short videos, so they're anywhere from 2 to 8 minutes is the longest. And basically, if you're to the point where you can read faster than the video, you can, and you can actually click down in the 2 paragraphs, and it'll just move the video to match where you're at. So the learning, like he was talking about in his keynote, about moving at your own pace, where you can speed up or slow down, and it does that. Some people learn by reading, some people learn visually, some, you know, this really accomplishes all learning many learning styles, and really truly does start from
So you think
scratch.
it's worth the money to subscribe to?
To me, yes. That's just my own personal opinion. I mean, I'm not,
Well, and
I'm
there's
just saying
also,
this. There's others, but
there's also lynda.com, L-Y-N-D-A, and that's also the
Yep.
subscription one. I'm not sure how much Drupal they have, but they
Yep.
have, if you
They
need
have some.
more CSS and PHP, you
Yep.
can pretty much learn just about anything on that site. It's kind of the
Yeah.
same format. They
Yes.
don't have the click to read
No, but-
awesomeness, but
But
it's
it's
still really good.
still good.
Mhm.
And yeah, Chris's is really Drupal specific. So I think he has around 700 videos on Drupal.
If you're starting off with just learning HTML and CSS and you're not ready to do the Drupal stuff yet, Adobe TV is
Oh.
how I learned, and that's free. You can go on, you just click in their Dreamweaver section, and it'll show you this is what a div is. This is how you make your H1 look the way you want it to. So that's the basic starting point of web stuff is how I started. Was Adobe TV. It's just AdobeTV.com.
AdobeTV.com.
It's really awesome.
Yeah.
You introduced me to
Yeah.
what do you mean by designing by grids? I have a general idea, but
Designing by grids it's fairly recent from the way I understand. And by recent, I mean like in the last 3 years, I guess, not like 2 months, but grids is 960 is the width, I believe. So you do it all proportionally. So if you have a 200 pixel width sidebar, you might have like, you know, you're designing in like 20 pixels. So you take up 200 of those, then you have a 20 pixel gap, and then you have your next spot is going to be your content, and then a 20 pixel gap, and then your other 200 pixel sidebar. So instead of having a sidebar that's huge with like a 5 pixel gap and then a small one with a like 30 pixel gap, it's designing it proportionally.
And so it's effective design with proportions and
Yep.
such.
Yep, and then a lot of them, a lot of the themes that are designing on grids, they'll, the increase and decrease, like if you increase your text size and stuff like that on your monitor, or on your computer, sorry, maybe you want to see it bigger, or you want to see it smaller in the Safari browser, it'll do that proportionally as well. So it'll fit it very nicely. It's basically, it's just visually pleasing to the eye, is pretty much what the grid-based system is.
I think what you mean by new is like new to the internet, because
Yeah.
before, like if you think back 10 years to GeoCities, like crap everywhere sites,
Yeah.
it seems like everybody now is very proportional, because if you have crap everywhere, it starts looking like ads and people are just gonna scroll past it and not look at it.
Yeah.
Some of the other ones, Balsamic is something to look into if you're interested in doing some quick framing for and clickable, quick sketching, framing to move from one view to another, etc. If you're working with someone especially that it isn't familiar maybe with designers or programmers, it allows them to be like, oh, I get it, you know, I can see that content would go here and these blocks would be this information. It's just a fast way to actually click through what you're going to end up developing, and essentially takes care of a lot of issues before you've developed or even programmed a site. Gets those issues taken care of, so you're not wasting too much time.
Sorry, and that's just using a wireframe?
That's Balsamic. The best way to describe it is, it really does look pretty elementary when you get into it, and so as a designer I was like, what are they giving me? It's fantastic though. Kind of takes the guesswork out of certain things. You can drag and drop essentially. Like you can drag like a Safari window or whatever kind of window, you know, browser you want. It'll have a Firefox browser, and then you can drag a menu list, and then you can actually type in certain names to the menu list, and you can actually have those link to a different page or a different view. So if you show it to someone, they can actually click through it.
You get
What
the behavior experience.
exactly, and what I had done previously was do that in PowerPoint. I mean, I remember PowerPoint, but I'm telling you, it worked, and it allowed people to see an image, and it just was a transition. So I had all these pages in PowerPoint, and if they clicked on the button, it transitioned them to a different spot, and there you were. So it did the same thing with a lot more effort in PowerPoint than this program. This program is quick. Fog Bugs is a great project management system, and I'll pick on Seth again. He's the one that brought this to our office, so I'm sure that he would be happy to tell you about the good things about Fog Bugs. But anyway, it is built for programmers by programmers. It's, but I also like it from a design perspective. I'm able to track jobs just as well as, you know, it's not just strictly like non-understandable or anything like that. I mean, it's really easy to use and a good program. And Site Improve is something that will, it's a program that will check your site for W3C standards. So basically it gives you a couple dials at the front, and Rachel can talk to you about this because she uses it a lot. It shows you broken links on your site, misspelled words, alt tags that are missing, similar alt tags. Chris, I think, uses it too. Chris Min is back there, and he could talk to you about it. But we've implemented that at College of Vet Med, and it allows each section or department to be responsible for their own pages. So this program automatically sends every department contact an email every month or every week that's a PDF with links to the pages that have issues, and they can fix them. and give them a little happy face when they're done. So it works out great. Yeah. What now? Oh yeah, it tracks, if you've got a lot, we have 70 to 100 web editors, okay? So not everyone is going to upload a normal, like a 72 dpi image. And including myself, when I'm in a hurry, Seth will tell you, like, I'm just like uploading an image that I need to. This will go back and tell you the image sizes and where they're at on your site so that you can go through and change them. Because the biggest problem is you might have an image in a couple places and you don't remember where they are, and this is very phenomenal for that.
So, and how does that work with Drupal if we're not really, don't really have pages?
It checks
Yeah,
the,
no, it
checks
checks-
the HTML
uh-huh.
online. It doesn't
Yeah.
go into files.
Right.
It goes online and
Yeah.
runs through your site. So it's not
Yeah.
anything really that you install in Drupal.
Right.
It's
It's
a
a
thing.
separate,
Yeah.
yeah,
Does all what the users see.
yeah.
All that stuff.
If you read an article and a user adds a photo to it, the photo might already exist somewhere and it may have been used 6 or 7 different times, but maybe there's something wrong with it and it will tell you where the actual file is that needs to be edited.
And it's
So
got-
if you have broken links on page,
Yep.
um,
it will bring up your page and actually put a red frown next to the broken link. And then you click on it, and you can actually then see where it's at, because in Drupal, you're going to want to go into Drupal to change it, but in Site Improve, it'll give you the URL. So it's like, okay, it'll give me an image of a page with the smiley face, and then I can click to the actual URL, go in to edit my Drupal and fix it, and then have Site Improve recheck the page, and it'll show up clean. So it's just a good way to do that, because I know that with accessibility and those standards now, it's getting more and more important that we need to follow. So.
You have a question?
Yeah, what theme was used for the camp? Do you
Is it-
know? Just curious.
Yeah, I should know.
It's
I
not
think they
very
use.
modified too, because it's a
Yeah.
Drupal 6,
Oh,
and so
I
there's
thought
no
they used
responsive themes for
COD
6.
and
Yeah, it's
something
COD.
else. I thought it was COD. Yeah.
okay. And then also as far as graphics, what format do you save it in before you put it in the Dreamweaver element, I guess? Is it like a PNG or is it a JPEG? Like
It depends on what kind of file it is. Like if it's line art, you're going to want to go PNG or not JPEG anymore, probably PNG.
Okay.
And if it's a photo, it's JPEG would be the best format.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. And if you have questions, we'll be around. And also don't forget there's a VOF session at 1 if you're interested. It's Design People Meet Web People. So, all right. Thanks a lot.